Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Sub 250 Oasis Fly 3.5. Obviously it's a 3.5-inch propped quad, and I would say the standout feature on this is using what I consider to be a small battery at 850 milliamp 4S battery. I've got it right over here. This one here, you can get a solid 5 minutes of really freestyle rippage, if you want to say. I thought that was pretty impressive, but the all-in-one flight controller is the Red Fox A3 that is a 45 amp all-in-one. The motors are Sub 250 branded 1804 3450 kV, and on that motor is an HQ 3.5 by 3.5 tri-bladed prop, and it comes with an extra set. Mine is with Express LRS, and the receiver is mounted right here above the 04. It is compatible with the 03 as well as the 04 Lite. It does have separated arms for individual arm replacement, and you can see where they're mounted down through here. Battery connection is an XT30. Flight controller comes with a USB dongle that you better not lose because this one is a little bit different than the others that I've used. Camera comes with rubber dampening. Got a capacitor down in there, but I can't tell what specs it is. It weighs 199.13 grams. Sub 250 says that it comes in at 245 grams with a 530 milliamp 4S battery, but I don't have one of those batteries, so the closest I can get is this 550. And with that 550, it weighs 253 grams. I didn't use this battery in flight. I did use these batteries in flight. With the 930 milliamp 4S G&B battery, it weighs 299.2 grams. With the Beta FPV Lava battery, it weighs 294.4 grams. With the Sub 250 branded 720 milliamp 4S battery, it weighs 267.58 grams. And with the 650 milliamp 4S G&B battery, it weighs 269.06 grams. Carbon fiber top plate looks like it's 2 millimeters thick. We've got two bottom plates. We've got one from the very bottom out to the nose, and then a sandwich plate on top that goes to the tail. Bottom plate that goes to the tail looks like it's about 3 millimeters thick. And the front plate looks like it's 2 millimeters thick. Front arm is almost 4 millimeters thick and approximately 8 millimeters wide. Rear arm looks to be about the same, 9 millimeters wide. Comes with two sets of rubber dampening for alternate cameras like the 03 or 04 Lite. It does come with bottom feet and screws, which of course those aren't included in the weight that I've showed you. It also comes with side plates, which again, didn't include that in the weight. We get an extra battery mat that's texturized, foam feet, a smattering of mounting screws and replacement screws. In my case, I got an 04 Air Unit manual, a flight controller wiring map, beta flight information on GPS rescue, but I didn't have the version with the GPS. I might be getting trolled because it came with a whole load of stickers. Here we go into my faster flight, and oh boy, a winter is here. It's no longer coming, it's here. Yeah, you'll see some other flight footage when it was a touch warmer. Unfortunately, I did my slower battery testing flight first, that's kind of typically my format when I go through different batteries looking at different flight times, because I know people like to hear that. But boy, by the time I got that stuff concluded, I actually was doing it on a couple of different quads. Notice that prop wash there. We'll get to that here in a minute. On those power loops, the prop wash. By the time I got done with the battery testing days, my weather just turned poo-poo. I was experiencing all sorts of wind, rain, and then cold temperatures set in after the rain. And on this day, it's 27 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, and with what the Weather Channel calls the real feel, or the index, 17 degrees. Winds of 8 to 12 miles an hour, but not terrible considering all the other winds that I'd had during this time. So about the power loops and the prop wash. So a little bit of that is me, but I also think that this could use a bit of a tuning touch-up. It's nothing terrible serious, but again, you know, I show it to you. You saw those first couple of power loops, and I came in a little bit flat, didn't bring my throttle up quite in time. And then I ended up getting some of that prop wash as we kind of came to the bottom or finishing part of the power loop. And then also at the very top of those zero throttle moves where I punch out over the house or over the chimney, there's a little bit of a shutter that I see there. But sometimes I wonder if my vision just doesn't see it because I remember it in the goggles. And yeah, I almost crashed. But I don't see it nearly as much when I watch back my flight footage. I should say that those that watch the channel regularly, this is a time of year where I don't fly as much. It's a combination of just, you know, bad weather as well as just less daylight. You know, by the time I get home from work, it's about, it's probably about 25 minutes. If I get home from work at my normal time, which is kind of a little bit early, got about 25 minutes of kind of flyable daylight, but not really. By the time I gather everything up and go out back, I'm down to probably 15 minutes at best. So this time of year, I have to do a lot of my flying over lunch breaks. I'm using air quotes there. You can't see that. or I come home from work, or I just work from work, or I have to do most of my flying on the weekends. That just means, during these colder North American months that I just have less time that I can fly. And in this particular case, I had actually gone out earlier with, some of you might be familiar with my heated gloves that I had on the channel from Rubber Quads. I think they still make those, but if they do, they're pretty slick. They're expensive, but they're pretty slick. And even with those, I don't think that I quite get the feel for the quad, the sticks. Then even with my fingertips out, because they have little pop outs on the glove, they're pretty slick. We'll take a quick peek at them when we get back to the desk. I don't quite have the dexterity and the feel that I think I need to have for the consistency for making review videos. I just don't think that flying with that impediment is right. I wouldn't want somebody to come along in 3-4 months and see a summary video and look, oh man, they see something that's similar, and then think that flies so much better because I'm not wearing gloves. So I try to be as consistent as possible, even though with the weather, that's not generally feasible this time of year because you're just not comfortable. Like I said, 27 degrees and 17 on the index side of things. So cold, cold, cold. This was one of the few flights that I had during it was about 3 days of flying that I didn't crash out relatively early, so I kind of have to use it. Yeah, I do crash out at the end of the flight, but thankfully it came at almost the perfect time because as I'm sitting there after the crash on the ground, the battery voltage is at 3.5 volts per cell. And then I couldn't turtle out of there. I couldn't get out of the grass. I kind of landed in a little divot. And then as I tried to get out of there, and then I turtled myself even further in there trying to clear the props, there was no getting out of it. It was time to end that particular flight, but this is one of the better flights that I had, all things considered. So I thought I should use it. Now on their website, like I said in the specs, they have this with a 530 milliamp battery at 245 grams. I suspect that's without all the side plates and the feet and the foam and all the different parts that you could add to the quad but are going to add weight. I suspect that's a G&B battery, but I don't have any of those, oddly. I have a lot of G&B batteries. I generally have a lot of batteries, but I just don't have the 530s. That's why I weighed it with the 550, and it was the red label, and so that's one of the higher quality 530s. And I think they say you can get, I would expect, let's not go by what they say, let's go by what I expect. That's a better estimate. Flying like this on a 530, there's our crash, would probably get you in the neighborhood of about 3 minutes of flight like this. As you can see, can't get out of there, so yep, gotta go pick it up. But the battery voltage is about where I want it, and 5 minutes on the flight time. We're going to jump right into my slower battery testing flight, and this flight will go from DVR to the onboard recording. You can see I've got some water out on the pool deck as we kind of pass by there. This is obviously a much nicer day, 61 degrees, and again 8 to 10 miles an hour on the wind. Our wind was fairly consistent on the fly days that I did well. There were some high wind fly days where I tried, but boy, my body is not acclimated to the cold. When the winds and the cold came in, I could stand it more than one flight, and I'd have to go back inside for 15, 20, 30 minutes. My fingers were chilled. I was chilled to the bone, so that was kind of difficult. But here is kind of dialing the clock back to a much warmer day. But I wanted to show you this. Give me some time to report the flight times on the batteries that I did test, which I did not test the 720 either, but hopefully this gives you enough. Again, I didn't have as much fly time with the lack of good weather and daylight, but the 930 that I showed in the weights, I got 11 minutes and 30 seconds on average. I have 4 of those batteries, but I flew 3 of them. The 850, I have 4 of those and flew 3 of those. That's the Lava 850s. I got 11 minutes, so pretty close, 30 seconds between the 850 and the 930. And then on the 650, which was another one that I wanted to test out, I got 7 minutes of cruisy flight time on the 650. Now, of course, if you want to get under the 250 gram, which is kind of the sub 250 category from this maker, on that 530 that they say brings the weight at 245, at this sort of flight time, I would expect it to be somewhere around the 5.5 minute marker, just based upon I'm speculating it's a G&B battery that's 530 in milliamp hours. Of course, that's a 4S battery, but we've already transitioned into the 4K onboard gyro steady and then back to the DVR. But I wanted to make sure that maybe you don't fly like I do. You don't have any desire to go out and do flips and rolls and punches and dives and whatever, you just want to cruise around, explore, feel like a bird or a plane or something for a while, then this is how it flies in that sort of style. And this is with the 930 milliamp battery, because this flight goes on forever. But I do want to highlight that I was maxed out on the camera angle on that faster flight, which doesn't quite get me to where I want to be. But this is what I presume is fairly standard when it comes to having this little rubber grommet as far as camera angle goes. Even if you remove this piece up here, you can't get more camera angle. Try to get that camera to focus. So this is the max camera angle, and of course it goes almost down to flat. We do have metal pieces up here in the front. You could, damage those or bend those up. It doesn't really provide any camera protection, as do really any of these with the 04 Pros in them. You'll probably get some camera protection if you use the 03 or the 04 Lite that they have available. It actually includes everything in the kit. Something that's interesting to me, and I'm not certain why they have it, is you can see this little metal piece that kind of bows out here. I'm not sure if that's just a design element or if that provides some sort of structural integrity. One of the things that I didn't include, I forgot to mention in the quick specs, is they do actually include 2 extra standoffs. So if you needed them here or here, where the standoffs go on either side, you do have replacements. I didn't highlight that in my quick specs. I noticed that when I was putting everything away. Of course, our battery cable is routed right off the flight controller. I would zip tie that to the edge of the carbon fiber, one side or the other. I haven't said this in a while, but it's a good thing to caution people against. Like, if you do get a battery ejection and this has nothing but the solder that's holding it onto the flight controller, there's some probability that you tug on this hard enough, you get damage down there, and that, is a tedious repair if you even have the skill set to do that. You have to take everything off, and you got to get in there and everything. But a simple zip tie, just kind of pinning this to the side of the carbon fiber where the wire comes through, just kind of running a zip tie through there, gives you something that this can pull against that's not the pads on the flight controller. So that's something that I would do if you're looking at this particular quad, or really any quad. Secure that battery lead with a simple little zip tie. It costs you half a penny or something like that. I do appreciate the battery mat that's texturized. It's actually got their logo and everything in it. Pretty typical stuff for sub 250 if you're not familiar with these quads. I thought it flew fairly well, but I did think it could use a little bit more touch on the PID tuning. There were some improvements that I thought we could make in prop wash, and then when you got inverted and there was a little bit of that shudder, we've seen that before with a number of other quads. I personally have a video on the it's a GEP-RC product. It's a 3-inch Cinewhoop that did that as well, and turning the throttle linearization up to I think 100%. Fixed it, but that's something that it would be better solved in the PID tune than doing that. But it was simple, something that was suggested to me, so I tried that first, and it did help. So if you're looking at this quad or any quad that has that little shimmer when you go inverted, you can punch out and you get off the throttle at 0 throttle, and it kind of wobbles just a touch. You can see it in that HD video. You could try throttle linearization, otherwise you're going to have to start tweaking the PID tune. Something that I've noticed in the past with some of these quads, when they have 3D prints for holding in our antenna here, that they could be difficult to route through, because I did have to do that on this particular quad. In this particular case, I didn't have any troubles. The hole size that they have, the UFL connector slid right down through, so no issue there. I just want to highlight that because sometimes I've seen them be too small, or they're at such an angle on 3D prints that it takes quite a bit of finessing, because you don't want to damage the UFL connector, to get them down through, and that's really your only option in some of these print designs. Of course, if you're using an 03, they've got a single mount down here for you, as well as a T-mount for Express LRS or any other T-mounted style antenna you got. I didn't have any troubles with anything coming apart, or really any damage, even in the cold, in that, I showed you kind of a light crash. These props have seen other crashes, and I've got some debris and stuff that I kind of cleaned off the quad. It's right down here now. Most of my other crashes were pretty minor. I was getting too cold. I needed to go inside and warm back up before I came back out, or I was ridiculously trying to fly it in too high of winds. When it was decent out, like 40s, our winds were between 20 and 33 miles per hour, but I would still go out and try to fly it, just because sometimes you got an itch and you got to go try, right? I thought it was a pretty efficient unit. I do think that you can probably expect to get If you were to put an 1100 milliamp battery, say you don't care about the 250 grams or it doesn't apply wherever you are, and you just wanted to go for max flight time in that sort of exploratory sort of flight, an 1100 milliamp battery is probably going to get you somewhere around 14, 15 minutes, maybe. I'm estimating there based upon the 930 getting 11 minutes and 30 seconds and the fact that it was relatively cool at 61 degrees. You know, warmer temperatures, batteries like that a little bit more. I've got some more debris up here too, geez. But overall, it's a pretty solid quad. I don't really have anything to complain about when it comes to mounting. They include extra screws if you go with the 03. Maybe you have an 03 on hand. You're going to mount it up in here. It does give you accessibility right to everything because it's just an open tail in here. They did use my favorite motor wire tape here on the motor wires to keep those down, keep those out of the prop line. We see that more and more and more, which is a nice thing. When it comes to removing the arms, I guess we can highlight that just a touch. Looks like got 1, 2, 3 screws for each arm. One of those screws is holding in the flight controller, so you'll probably have to hold on to that nut that's right there when removing that screw to replace an arm. First, you'll have to cut the motor wire tape, take the motor screws out in order to be able to replace that arm. I suspect they have options when you buy this of buying extra arms, extra props, batteries. Most sites are doing that now anyways. So when you move up in prop size, you know, I do mostly micros, just about exclusively on micros. When you get closer and closer to that 4 and 5 inch, you gain efficiency in the prop size, but you can still stay relatively small. And in this particular case, you know, you've got the props out of use. So if you like to do the classic cinematic sort of flying, you could do that with this. I thought the freestyle or rippage sort of flight was pretty fun and enjoyable, even in the cold state that I was trying it in. And oh yeah, the gloves that I mentioned. So these are the gloves that I oftentimes use this time of year, but I don't use these when I'm flying in my preferred flight style, the more faster freestyle sort. They got a texture here real quick. You can pop out your thumb and your finger, and I like to actually squish these back a little bit. But I do feel like I still don't have the dexterity that I'm quite looking for in order to be consistent across videos. So I tend to not use gloves. I tend to just bear the cold and do the best I can with hand warmers in my pockets and stuff like this. These are heated, and this pattern in here is where the heat comes from. There is a battery in this little zipper down here, and then it has a power button right here. If you long press it, it should turn on for us here in just a second. Yeah, there we go. And then you press the power button, short presses, to give you a different temperature ability. But expensive. Rubber quads, if they have them, check them out, rubberquads.com. I know a number of people last year when I got these did buy them. If you have a set, let me know what you think of them. I wouldn't suggest these for like shoveling snow, which we did get snow directly after the freestyle flight that I showed you. And then me and the girls, because our son is off at college, me and the girls went out and we shoveled ours. We shoveled our neighbor's driveway, and then we did the sidewalk all the way around our cul-de-sac just to be friendly and neighborly. And you're outside and you're already sweaty, so why not? But that's enough about these. As I'm recording this, I don't have a price point. I suspect it comes with different versions and things of that nature. But if you're speculating, let's do a little guessing game and put your guess for what the price with an 04 Pro as well as an Express LRS receiver is down in the comment section. And then when we go to visit the site, which there'll be a link down in the video description, we can see how close we were, because I've got my own number in my head, and I'll put my number in the pinned comment. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the Oasis Fly 3.5 from Sub 250, please let me know in those comments section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.